I'm going to talk about a term that's a little bit niche and specific. Um, Most people probably haven't come across this term. Um, it's sort of a niche role or a niche type of arrangement. I want to talk about being, a fractional CIO, CTO, or just being a fractional executive in general. I've held a few sorry, I lost my train of thought. I've held a few fractional roles in my life, quite a few. That's something I specialize in. And fractional CIO, CTO, I'll just say CXO, right? To represent the X represents any letter. The cool thing about fractional CXO roles is that they're often needed for enterprises that are going through change. So you have an enterprise that doesn't usually need a CIO or CTO or what have you, but for a short time, so sometimes it's just interim or term, or just occasionally, right? So time to time, maybe just once a week checking in. They need a fractional CXO, someone to come in, provide that expert leadership. But the way they're poised, they don't need it on a full time basis. It's a very appealing arrangement. I've enjoyed many concurrent fractional CXO roles where in a single week I'm actually managing a couple of different companies as a consultant. And it's always been sort of this agent of change who's ensuring a continuity of operations while leading primarily modernization projects, but sometimes just scalable growth. So in these arrangements, what often happens is, I come in once a week, or when I say come in, sometimes it's remote, um, but I define what the company should be doing to move closer to its goal over the next week, working closely with IT management. Um, some of the enterprises have been sometimes they're startups who are looking to kind of grow a little bit, but they aren't at a point yet where having a permanent CXO makes sense, whether it's CTO or CIO. Sometimes it's been old companies whose product really doesn't depend on technology. So think maybe a newspaper company, a magazine company, think maybe hand wipes company. Um, a lot of manufacturing, some consumer goods, some chemical or cosmetics companies, I should say, have gotten by fine without a formal, CIO at the top. Some of them get by with like a VP. Some of them just have a director of IT, um, or some of them even have, a manager for IT, and that's sort of the highest, most authority of IT for that company. So fractional CXOs, we come in and we help develop, what the company should be doing over the next week. What does the vision look like long term? And how can the company reach a point where your services are no longer needed? So sometimes a company is just looking to grow a little bit more, from a technical perspective, sometimes from a management perspective. Um, and you come in, you help them mature. And then once you've completed your role, you ensure that there's a good plan for how management that already exists in the company can now handle these new products or these new responsibilities, and just ensure that there's a good division, established responsibilities and boundaries, and everyone knows in this target state, in this newly transformed enterprise, what their roles are. Sometimes fractional opportunities transform into permanent or longer term engagements. So sometimes companies, after they change, they realize that they're actually a little bit more reliant on technology than they thought, or perhaps they're more reliant now than they were before because of the change that they've gone through. And other times, a fractional CXO comes in, helps a company enhance themselves in some meaningful way, and then their need is gone, and the existing resources of the company are adequate enough to keep things running. I, for one, believe that any company that has revenue in the 6 or 7 figures, and has employees in the double digits should consider having some resource that maybe isn't called the CIO, but they should have someone whose job it is to manage the tech for that company. Because once you reach double digits in the human capital side, once you reach 6, 7 figures revenue, there's no way that you are completely independent of technology. You are using technology in some capacity. You need someone to be managing your business email domain. You need someone managing your website or your application, however you're conducting your business. You need someone kind of managing your customer data. um, you are using technology to conduct your business, and once you reach a certain size, uh, again, not to say that a small company might need a CIO, but having some authority who maybe acts as a CIO, even if they aren't called that, that is extremely important for the enterprise to succeed. I've seen some companies have hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, and they don't have a CIO. They have like an IT manager, which is a very bad practice, and that's probably what's keeping them from getting into the billions. And I speak from experience. I have seen a company as a manufacturing company, and I wholly believe it could have been operating in the billions. And I know for a fact that the leadership they had was really lacking when it came to using the technology they had adequately, as well as just the roles they had. I think they had like a network manager and a manager of information technology or something, like two managers in an entire company with almost 1,000 employees and over almost, I think, over 200+ million dollars in revenue. Um, they just were not leveraging the technology appropriately. So fractional CXO roles are interesting. They have a business value, oftentimes lead to full permanent opportunities. Sometimes they don't, but I can say with confidence, if a company hires someone in a fractional capacity and does not keep them long term, I would be considered, not considered, I would be concerned about the trajectory of that company. Because when companies hire a resource short term and then go back to the way things were, at least from a management perspective, um, it doesn't really bode well in the long term because it shows what their priorities are. Once you reach a certain size, you don't need a fractional CXO. You probably need someone permanent. Um, and I'm hoping that this will be a standard that kind of reaches um, outdated enterprises that operate, with the old ways of working. Some companies have just a CEO, and then they have director of finance, director of marketing. They don't have a CMO. They don't have a CFO. And these are companies that make millions and millions of dollars. So I'm hoping that as time goes by, more and more companies, especially now where there's just a lot of restructuring happening, a lot of change. I hope companies wise up and see the value in either a fractional CXO. At the very least, you should have someone fractional on your team, some expert who's coming in every week and making sure that everything is aligned properly, or preferably they see the value in having more executives beyond just the CEO of a company. So that's a little bit of overview into fractional CXO, what I do when I'm fractional, and my thoughts on where the market should go, particularly for companies that ask for fractional resources, and then don't intend to keep them on perm.